All right, welcome class. Props 260, prop design, prop and weapon design for games. Uh, all right, so let me get my bearings a little bit here. There's a slight echo, so that kind of bugs me a bit. And let me know if you're not getting HD or proper sound. All right, let's jump into this week's assignment. I just put together a quick washing machine to do an exploded view drawing for our demo. Nothing to shout about in terms of design sensibilities. Super fast. I just did it maybe 10 minutes before the stream start, but the influence is based on the TF2 chain gun there, the rail gun, and I will take this design and start to make an exploded view to really get a feel for the prop itself. Okay. All right. I definitely sound off if you have any questions as I'm doing this. Okay, you can see that I gathered some reference for what an interior of a washing machine would look like, especially this front load model, right? I'm not an engineer, but still, as a prop designer, we have to make our designs convincing enough, right? So there has to be some basis of reality there, even though it's a little nonsensical that this machine is based off of a chain gun design. Right, so if your drawing is a little cleaner than mine, it'll definitely help you with this next part of the process, right? Making an exploded view. I'm going to clean that up a bit. And it's not the best angle that I drew this prop at now in hindsight, looking at it. I should have added more of a top-down three-quarter view so that I can get a sense of the top side of it as well. And actually, it's not too late to change that. I can tweak that just a bit. There, that feels a little better. All right, and I'll probably, let's see if this works. Nope, I'll have to draw it. And if you're watching this as a recording after the fact, I'll be jumping in after this quick demo of week 2's homework to start to critique the homework from week 1 of the people that I missed in class. Right, so hopefully the stream will clock in at around 1.5 hours or so. I'm not planning on spending too much time on this one. This should be relatively quick tonight. Right. And the second variant of this, I believe there was a question in class about someone mentioning if they did a Darksiders themed washing machine, how would you go about approaching drawing the internals of such a made-up device, right? And so I'll cover that as well after this one. Okay, there's one. And then this door is definitely another component. That I can explode just to show the design. Oops. Yeah, I'll turn it just a bit. I'll add a little bit more degree to that ellipse and not worry too much about the handle now. All right. You can see where I'm starting to borrow a lot of the look from for this washing machine, like this door from there, that top panel from this part. Okay, now that handle I'll definitely add as well to my exploded components, right? And that's that handle right there, right? Pretty much. And if I remember correctly, one of the questions that we had in class was, you know, how does this, I'm kind of paraphrasing, but how does this help our prop design? And I think the reason why this exercise is really valuable is it makes you think a little deeper about the functionality of your design, and that definitely helps sell believability when there's a sense that this can actually function in the real world, or in the real make-believe world, I guess, if that makes sense. Still trying to get used to this narration with no audience, basically. You know, some of you might be watching after the fact if there's low viewership tonight. So, yeah, I'll try to make it as informative as I can, right? Given the limitation of not being able to interact live. All right, so maybe there's a handle or a hinge on the opposite side. Okay, so that's 2. Oops, I just realized something. I did not follow the perspective. Alright, let's see if I can fake this. Alright, so I established that 3/4 view, but I didn't exactly follow it. Let's see if I can get away. With doing just some slight alterations to bring back that perspective. Alright, that handle definitely is going to need to be redrawn. Okay, that feels a little more comfortable. Yeah, you notice that I'll employ a lot of draw through, meaning whatever construction lines I need to get a feel for the shape, I'll put it in, and I'll also draw through to the other side if it feels a little bit weird and I need to build up the form, right? Okay, that's a feeling a little cooler, a little better. I'm resisting the urge to go into too much detail just because my source material is very stylized, right? And there's some minor, smaller details here and there, but not too much overall. Okay, this is interesting right here. The reason why I decided to put kind of this negative space all over here in my washing machine design is I really want to highlight that wash cylinder as the main element, one of the main elements, which I borrowed from this TF2 chain gun, right? And you know, this exploded view drawing that I found off the internet features it really prominently, so that's why I decided that that's pretty much going to be my focal point of my design. right? This starts to hint at some of the construction of how this wash basin part of the washing machine is built. I'm pushing really hard to stay on model with the source, right, while remixing it into a viable, believable washing machine. Right, since there's a hinge on this end of the door, there'll have to be that, I guess, I don't know what you call the other side of a hinge. A counter hinge, maybe? Yeah, that's why I'm not an engineer or a product designer. I would know all the technical terms for these. All right, and let's see. All right, trying to align it a little bit with the perspective I have established. Oh, hi, Rafa. Um, okay. Let me chat in the chat box here. It looks like Rafa's not getting audio. Oh, okay, cool. Looks like Rafa's audio is back on. Yeah, I'm basically streaming without headphones. Um, just because when I wear headphones, there's this weird delay echo. I'm talking on my end, and I don't hear the audio for maybe 2 seconds later. So it does get a little bit disorienting. So, yeah, I had to rely on chat a lot of times to kind of let me know if there's any technical difficulties. Okay, so I know that in class there was a slight worry about, that 15 component count requirement for this exploded drawing, and you can see here I already got like 4, right? If I want, I can even explode out those buttons to get more, right? To pad up my count number. All right, really still trying to align this cylinder. It still bugs me a bit. And I think I'll do just that. All right, I'll just take this out. Also take this out, and that right there gives me 2, right? 2 extra to add to the component, and I'll do a little quick indicator line to show where those knobs go. Right, depending on how detailed I want to go into this design, and really figure out the mechanical aspects of it, how everything attaches, I'll do a little more research. But for now, I am just going to focus on what you see externally before I dive into the inner workings. Right? I'll just get the visible pieces first. Before heading in to do the more complex mechanical engineering work. Right, if you're working in Photoshop, definitely take advantage of some of the tools at your disposal. No, I should be drawing with maybe a line tool for some of this technical stuff. But I find that, you know, for the preliminary design, if I'm not doing a cleaned up drawing freehand just adds that much more character to the work. That's just a personal preference, really. Right, another thing you'll see me do a lot is just duplicate things that are symmetrical, and if it makes sense, you know, you can do that and the perspective still works. Go ahead. I mean, save yourself that few minutes, right? Because at the end of the day, you know, efficiency is a big part of workflow also. Right, so as I am doing the exploded view of this, it's actually helping me catch some of the flaws in my original quick design of that TF2 washer. And I can actually use this to my advantage and fix any mistakes, you know, fix any design flaws that break believability of this made up prop, right? Okay, so mechanical engineering, or at least make-believe mechanical engineering, when it comes to prop design, anytime you see an attach point is a perfect design opportunity, right? In this case, I'm kind of asking myself, how does this actually attach to that wash drum, that cylinder, right? And then I added an extra joint or a hinge and a rotating axis there to kind of attach this in place, which brings up another problem. If it's attached this way, how does the cylinder spin the close, right? So I might have solved one problem, but I've created additional flaws in the design, which of course I'll solve. Right? Another opportunity to use that lever, that handle thing from the chain gun, as an attach point or as a fastener device. Okay, so I've kind of drawn myself another problem I need to solve, and that's going to be solved by adding an interior cylinder, right? And that will have uh, free spinning capabilities, I guess, so it can rotate inside this one. Right, and just to make it seem like it does rotate within the bigger cylinder, I'll give some visual clues. Right, in this case, a hint of grooves or a thread. And I'll just flatten that down. So in order to make this clear to my audience that one sits inside the other, I might actually do a combination of exploded and cutaway. Right? We had talked about using a cutaway method in class as well. Right? So it doesn't really have to be either or. Right? And I'll make this really clear, or as clear as I can. I hope this makes sense, right, to the viewer, that this is indeed a chunk being cut out from the initial cylinder, and this being shoved inside. Right, so let's see if that works. I'm not too sold on if it's clear that this is indeed a cutaway, but let's just leave it for now. Maybe if I ghost it a bit like that, you know, kind of make this one feel transparent, this outer one feel transparent, it'll sell the fact that that inner one, right, should be sitting inside. Alright, so the last thing I might do is indicate some sort of motor. Alright, from what I think, you know, based on this quick reference of the inner workings of a washer, there's a lot of belts, there's some motors here, and then the belt is attached to the motor spins the belt, which then spins the washing drum, right? The agitado, I guess. Right, and then spin assembly, water pump, blah blah blah. I'm probably not gonna do that much detail. Okay, so the only part that still has any room for any mechanics is the top part of the design, right? Since this is all negative space at the bottom. So I'll just add a motor, right? That's resting inside a box panel. Right, so I'll draw that panel first. Account for the fact that it sits on top of a cylinder. And then the motor, I'm not going to reinvent the wheel. I'll just probably borrow how it's represented here with that Team Fortress feel in mind. Nope, that's too sci-fi. Okay, and here's the belt attach point, and maybe I'll connect the belt, right, to make it very clear to our viewer that this is spinning our washer. And you can see I'm extending these kind of axis lines just to make it super clear, you know, where the spin axis is, in addition to, you know, what it's aligned with. Okay, maybe I'll put a different kind of arrow to indicate the assembly. And now that I have, you know, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, I'm getting close. All right, do I want to explode more stuff? Yeah, maybe this. And I'll just say that behind that is the glass, which again I can also explode to add to my count. I keep drifting on the establish perspective grid, right, which is kind of like, should be a little bit like this. And that's how I'm trying to align all my items, right, with this kind of box view in mind. Okay, let's clean this up. Right, so it's still super rough, I would say. I need to fix some of my shaky lines. But we're almost there. Right, we're almost done. Just breaking this hinge assembly apart. And let's see if I can also get away with duplicating this here. Just bringing it straight across. Oops, looks like I tore it too. Okay. Okay, so it's starting to feel a little bit more complex, and I feel like I'm starting to lose the context of everything, right? So I'm going to try to rearrange this again, and maybe also add some arrows so that it makes sense what goes where. Right? Sometimes proximity is enough, but when in doubt, I will probably draw extra arrows. So yeah, this still bugs me a bit. Right, and if you're still joining me live, definitely chime in. Right, if anything I'm doing doesn't make sense, or if I'm going too fast. This one's a tough one here. I'm not sure how I would represent this as the hinge that holds everything together. I'll have to mull on it a bit, maybe after the stream. But hopefully seeing the original one-piece design, it will make a little more sense. Okay. Yeah, just trying to figure out a way to lay these out so that the diagram is more self-explanatory. Again, losing that lean in the perspective and trying to bring it back. Okay. Let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. So yeah, cool. Yeah, so I mean, this pretty much jives with our component count, right? Suggested component count. And I'll add the opposite side just for some context. All right. So yeah, I mean, that's pretty much one exploded drawing done. Let's bring back my full scale or one piece drawing. and figure out a good layout to present this, right? So with hindsight, after doing this exercise for myself, I probably would not have drawn that original design at this angle. Right? It's a very flat angle. You don't get the top surface of this washing machine, so you're losing a lot of opportunities to describe the form of this design. Right? So maybe now with this in full context of this one next to the exploded view, it'll make more sense. Right? And here I'll just, self-critique that I followed the reference image angle of the washer a little bit too closely, and that was a detriment to my design, because yeah, I mean, you just see the front and the side, you don't always see the top, so you're missing a lot of opportunity to describe that whole form, right? um, yeah, so now looking at this, okay, one other thing I just thought of, let's see if this is going to work. In order to sell that context even more, let's see if I can actually do this and fit that inside of the bracket there that kind of holds it together, and see if it feels more readable, right? Just some unfortunate tangents there, lines blending with other lines right there that I'm not digging too much. Alright, so this one, okay, so since this sits behind this and it is symmetrical, I can get away with erasing the other side, and there should still be enough context for the viewer. Right, so there's totally a lot of thought going into layout of these exploded drawings as well, right? Try to really make sense of the jumbled mess. Sometimes this exercise, I remember when I did it, it was super tough to try to keep things in context. Alright, so now that, yeah, this definitely feels a little bit better. Now looking overall at the whole thing, I'm thinking that I can definitely borrow something from that area, or maybe even this area, right? That box I threw in feels pretty weak overall design-wise. I'm not really digging it. So maybe instead of a box, right? So because of this back and forth, I'll definitely have to redraw that main view. Okay. So maybe this could serve as a better design. the little cubby hole so that you can totally tell that this sits on top of the wash basin. So now, maybe if I do an arrow like this, I definitely need to get a quieter keyboard. All right. Now it'll feel a little bit more cohesive, this exploded drawing. All right. So I would call that like the wrap on the hard work of figuring out the exploded view. To present this, I'll probably take some time, clean up the line work, but the hard work is done, right? Figuring out all the forms, how it explodes, how it fits back together, and yeah, how you assemble and disassemble it, right? Probably clean up some of that stuff, lose. Oops, let's see. Lose some of these guide tangent lines maybe. And also redraw. Okay, so one design down and one exploded drawing down. Right, so let's jump into the other question of, okay, so if it's a washer dryer, and I believe the question in class was if it's a Darksider's washer and dryer, how do you make that leap when you do the exploded view of the internals, right? And we dove into that a bit with the toothbrush, and yeah, this is where your own design sensibilities would come in terms of what the motor would be. All right, so you know what? Maybe to speed things up, I won't redesign the components per se. I'll just visually change what I designed here into Darksiders. Right, so, or a Darksiders toaster, or sorry, a Darksiders washing machine. Okay, I'm probably not going to draw the whole thing, but I will draw the components. All right, so let's say this is now a wash cylinder, a wash tub, but with Darksiders design language. Let me study the reference a bit and see what I can borrow. Right, everything is super sharp and spiky, and that's what I'll probably play up on. It's going to be kind of laughable that there's so much spikes inside this wash basin. But again, we're not saying that it works 100%, but we're just explaining make-believe mechanics of how something could possibly work, right? Maybe this is not for washing clothes, it's for washing armor. So your armor should be able to withstand tumbling through all these spikes if you have like level 60 armor, I guess. All right, I'll steal the design language of these banding. I'm not sure what a good term for those would be, but yeah, I always refer to them as the band. And one of the things with Darksiders is there's really not a long stretch of a straight line, with the exception of this one, right? But everything else, there's a lot of interesting things happening with the silhouette, so maybe I can borrow that as well. Not digging that. Take it out. And the one thing that I realized too, something I brought up last week was everything felt too orderly on some of the teeth for one of the coffee makers, and I'm falling into the same trap too. So now I'm jumping back in and making it maybe a little bit more asymmetrical, right? A lot more random. Okay, what can I translate and use for the equivalent of the support legs? Again, everything is very claw-like, sharp and spiky. I'm going to borrow this gauntlet spiky ball looking thing, and that's going to be my equivalent for the joint that holds together the leg, right? So I guess my best explanation of how you translate one visual design language to another is the function doesn't change, just the form, right? If that makes sense. Right, and am I going to carry that band across? Maybe not. Right, having that background reference is getting a little bit too distracting, a little bit too noisy, so all right. Okay, so here's where I'm going to switch up the mechanics a bit. Instead of a belt-driven motor, because Darksiders is magic-based, I'll probably change the motor to some sort of power receptacle or crystal holder, whatnot. Right? Who knows? Or maybe someone cast a spell on this. Maybe this is a life form in here. Maybe this is some kind of a conch, right? Like a magical crustacean or shell or something that spits out lightning or something. I don't know. Some kind of power that powers the evil washing machine. And how do I connect this? I don't know. Right? Maybe I'll draw hints of that power that's giving off. Right? The context is going to be a little more challenging since this is way left field in terms of everyday devices. So yeah, as soon as I factor in all these exploded components, I'm going to have to review its placement and its context and everything, just like I did with the TF2 toaster. I'm trying to add some lateral support for the legs. I don't know. Since I'm not designing, or since I didn't design this beforehand, before exploding it, kind of tough going. Right. Designing and exploding it at the same time. The door. Okay, so we have like a hinge. I can keep it the same, or I can try to come up with some new hinge mechanic. Let's see. So maybe it's like this claw-like hook, and the door itself has some kind of loop, or an evil loop, I guess, for the claw to go in. Right. The handle, is it an explodable object, or is it more of a form that organically grows from the door? I don't know. Yeah, this is starting to add more challenges than necessary because I didn't design it beforehand. Right, and as with everything Darksiders, going to be some kind of skull, gargoyle-ish facade. It's a little cheese, but maybe in this case it works. Maybe. Alright, again, I feel like I'm staying too even and too symmetrical with a lot of the width and thickness of items, so maybe I'll just skew it a bit. Right? Maybe give it a little bit more unevenness and asymmetry to the way I treat some of these forms. And it'll feel a little bit more organic. Alright, so I can continue on, but I hope everyone gets the idea of how to convert the mechanics of one totally different visual design direction and bend it towards another visual direction while keeping the functionality and the form, well, not the form, but excuse me, but the functionality the same, right, while pivoting on the visuals. Yeah, this feels like super bad there. I'm gonna give that a thumbs down. But yeah, I definitely need to resolve some of this. All right, so I hope that answer everyone's question, especially I forget who asked the toaster or the washing machine question about going Darksiders on it. All right, so I'm gonna wrap up this part of the stream for demo of week two's assignment, and you can continue to follow along if you want to see review on your homework from week one for the people that I missed during our second week in class, right, our feedback. All right, so let me save this real fast. Okay, if you're just joining us, the week two homework demo is wrapping up, but I am gonna jump into week one reviews. Right, I'm trying to remember everyone that I didn't get to. Hopefully, if you're watching this, and I think I got everyone, or I think I have all the files open here of the people that we didn't get to do an in-class review of your homework. Anna, Josh, let's see, this is Rafas, Sayaka, Heath, Ty, and Taylor. All right. So Rafa, since you're on here, let's go through yours first. Okay. All right. The first one, first set of toaster, Team Fortress. All right. So I think number 3 is the strongest of the bunch in terms of elements that you borrowed from it, from Team Fortress. Where I would push some of the forms is definitely areas here, right? Add that extra line just to show the thickness. I know you showed it here, which works well, but carry it across. And also, I would play with this distance, right? Meaning they're feeling a little bit similar in how much you see of it. So I'm gonna make one more pronounced by extending it a little further. Right, and the other one doesn't extend that far out, so it's kind of subordinate to that extrusion in the front. Right, So yeah, I mean overall, it feels pretty good, right? So I didn't really change too much. I'm just pushing it here and there. This knob, I would definitely add some thickness to it. And give it a little bit more chunkiness. It almost feels like a sticker on your version of it. So just adding that side face will bring a little more form to that. So all right, so yeah, the handle's a nice touch. Probably wouldn't change too much about it. The location is where I might mess around with and see if it feels better, right? Um, and this is something that's totally up to your call. I am only suggesting this just because design-wise, for something that's so stylized, when everything conveniently splits something in the center, right? In this case, it's the center of this panel here. I might offset it just a tad to see if it feels better, right? If not, I'll put it back. And if there's kind of like an explanation for why, I always uh, tend to maybe stray away from right in the center. Not sure if the ratio, the golden ratio, it's something like this, right? It keeps dividing, right? So it's like a seashell thing or something, yeah, something like that, right? And basically the main takeaway of this, if I drew it a little bit better, is it's almost like a third, a third, and then that the next rectangle is broken up into like a third, you know, or actually, sorry, 2/3 and 1/3, right? So this would be 2/3, and I'm just playing it a little bit there with the 1/3 to 2/3 ratio, right? This is supposed to be harmonious in terms of its distribution of the ratio. So yeah, that's sometimes that's my reasoning for placing this here or placing this there. All right, and maybe one more layer. This this handle, this flat metal handle in the back of that chain gun, right? I think it does something like this. Right, so it's a piggyback handle, and I want to see if it makes sense to add just a hint of legs, right? And again, I want to be careful that I make it slightly not as deep, I guess, right? As that side width there, so not as to compete. And yeah, I would call it, that's my spin on it. Okay, so let's take a look at number 3. All right, number 1, I feel it's almost getting there, but it's missing maybe some angular components. All right, this feels kind of cool. This works, except that I might play with offsetting it a little bit more outside to give it more room away from the side of that, right? So when I draw the other side, hopefully it'll make sense. Right, so drawing through. Right, so possibly something like that. And the construction, so let me take a look. Okay. I'm missing some of the paneling feel, right, of this. Like this is wrapped over that half cylinder form. So I might indicate that here. All right, so it's just slight variations on what you have, Rafa, but for the most part, some pretty interesting approaches overall. And then it looks like you have that knob out here too. Same comment. I would add that edge thickness to it just to give it a little bit more bulk, chunkiness. That is kind of like a hallmark of the TF2 stuff. Construction-wise, be careful of the intersection of some of these compound forms, right? You have from the front, you have this little mound, I guess the best word for it would be, right? So, and then you have a cylinder that intersects right into it. So if you were to draw that, it would possibly be taken into account, right? And this is how I would approach it. I would draw, right? So this is what I'm thinking of, right? I'm drawing the center line of that cylinder, and then if the center line hits this pill thing, how does the line spread, right, or extend, right? So in this case, it would go here, and it would go to the other side, and from the side view, the cylinder's plugged in, you're gonna get something that looks like that, right? So this is what I'm trying to replicate here. right? So that intersection line is going to be closer to something like that. Right, and again, really emphasizing the silhouette of the Team Fortress stuff. They have this like out, in, down, out, you know, down, in. So yeah, really just playing with that. And that's the reason why also I brought the handle out a bit to give it a more add more negative space to these area right here. Okay, this one's pretty cool, and the reason why I think it works well is it has all the components, you know, the hallmarks of tidbits here and there of the Team Fortress design. Technically, I would again just be careful of my compound forms. Right, really sell that 3D-ness, right? Uh, plane 1, plane 2, plane 3. And I see you doing it here with the band, right? The silhouette. Make sure that it's carried to the other side as well, right? Very minor things, but when it's a hallmark of a visual language, it's where you have to be real accurate in carrying it over. Right, so that silhouette is like there's the top side, goes down, tucks under, goes down, top side goes down. Right, so that's basically what I drew there. Right, like a close up of that. This one is furthest away. I think this is in the same group, right? So I think it's furthest away from TF2. But let me actually take a look to see if there's any other ones that you were going after. Maybe the rocket launcher? But yeah, there's not enough. In this case, I would say a medium shape to this. Right, so maybe let's see if I can mess around with your same shapes, but just adding the chunk factor to it, for lack of a better term. All right, so here's another play on the silhouette. Since you have like this kind of volcano looking silhouette, this extrusion for the base of the switch, I just made it go the opposite direction. And then the switch on top, I made that go the opposite direction. Right? Or I can even throw in like an ergonomical curve, right, to really help offset some of the pretty straight lines, right? Just see. All right. Yeah. So I would play with that a little bit more. Okay. Looks like the Corey Loftus based Chua furniture. So let me just pick the one that, to speed up for the other people still without making the stream too long. I'm just going to pick one from each set. I think out of all of them, this one strays a little bit far, and the reason is there's too much non-silhouette, interesting silhouette things going on in this design. Right, everything is mostly hugging the curves. How would I bring that back? Is this design right here? I noticed that the top panel extrudes out, and it has a slight overhang above that boxy form on the bottom, right? So boom, that's what I would borrow. There's some curvature in it as well, right? There's like some peaks right there, and the corners in there are a little bit rounded. So that's another thing I could borrow. The pipes have these transitional elements, and let's see if you carry it through. Yeah, you did. So I'm really happy to see that. I think that aspect of it works pretty well. So what can I borrow? Okay, since you have something happening up front, maybe to counter offset or to balance it out, I'll jut it out the back. Right, and maybe I'll bring a slight curve to that corner at the bottom. Right, so this is a really cool transitional element. What I would attempt to do is, if you look at this transition from the side, it looks like you got a plate, you got a little sleeve, and then the pipe, and then the elbow, right? And then it goes into another thread. I guess I don't know what you call this part of the pipe. This is where Mario would stand, I guess. Mustache. All right. So instead of doing this is where I'll push some shapes here and there. Maybe I'll make that angular, right? So that it extends out more up top and tucks in under there. And this flange or whatever part here, what if I add a taper to it too? Okay. Yeah. Everything else, that this element up top definitely works pretty cool. Construction wise, I would, since we're viewing this from the top, I would say that the ellipse curves a little bit more. Right, so I'm just drawing the bottom of that ellipse now, and then the center line, I'll bring it up and say that's the top of the cone, right? So same thing here. That ellipse is going to curve a little bit more. Right, so since this is a repeating scale, right, for this other pipe here, I want to see if I can vary it as well and make it consist of two. Right, maybe this one has a kink a bend. All right. All right, and I pretty much forgot the the toasterness of it, so we'll bring the slice back in. All right, so it's if it's not selling toaster, again, just add a slice of toast context. Arrow, right? Something. All right. Okay, it looks like Quake 4 boxes, toaster boxes from Paul Richards. Excuse me, take a drink. All right. Yeah, these feel pretty good. Right, some interesting stuff going on. Um, 12 and 13 feel a little bit too similar. I wouldn't I probably wouldn't say that that's enough to kind of like use it as a variant. It's a little bit too close, right? Yeah, these actually work out pretty well. Out of all of them, I would say these this two is the one that I might beef up a bit. Okay. The panels is definitely where I would play around with depth. Right? Can I pop this out maybe? And can I also beef it up? And so maybe even something as straightforward as that will help bring it closer towards the Quake 4 source. And I might add a layer of transitional design before I get to the toaster slice, right? The toaster slot itself. So maybe there's like a little dip before you get to that slice opening, that slot. Proportionally, this feels a little bit too flimsy, right? In relation to the bulkiness of this toaster. So it's not a lot, but I'm just gonna chunk it up a bit. And oh, here's where the golden ratio comes into play. All right, you see how this, and this feels like it's one third, one third, one third, whereas the ratio is like kind of like one third to two thirds. Right, so two thirds, one third, oops, something like that. So what I would do is possibly nudge this in a bit and see if it still works, right? If it makes sense. I really like that negative space in the middle, so I'll definitely keep that. But I'm gonna change the ratio just a tad. All right, so that moves this over as well. And this brings up another similarity, right? The width across all these is starting to feel very repetitive to me. So what if I do that? So right, so yeah, this is just one of a lot of ways that you can maybe mess around with the proportions and the layout of some of these design elements. But yeah, I mean, this is all just based on my own sensibilities, right? All right. And this looks like some kind of mech from a mech game, possibly, or an animation. But yeah, it feels pretty cool, right? It almost looks like a toaster already, so you're halfway there. Cool. Okay. So I don't know if the original designer had this in mind, but if you kind of check it out, right from the side, why did they decide to put that line right where it was, right? That major break in the form. Yeah. So I mean, it could be the golden ratio, or it could be just a subconscious thing to place that line there instead of like maybe halfway or something, which could possibly work as well. But yeah, I mean, this breaking up and leaving this form kind of bare versus starting to sprinkle details in here, it's a nice balance. All right, so it looks like 16 follows that. I will probably, I think 15 and 16 feel pretty good. 14 is starting to break a little bit in terms of where you're distributing the detail. All right, the shape feels pretty cool. I dig the overall form. Um, where I would decide is, you know, like this, and this. They're kind of close in terms of scale. And if you notice what the original designer did, oops, drew on the wrong layer. Okay. what they did when we were talking about the distribution of the detail up here. I'm going to see if I can carry it across down here. Right, so I'll decide maybe to bisect that side form there, and let's see here, that back panel is going to be the largest element, and the other ones are kind of secondary players in this toaster. So maybe, right? So this is one possible layout configuration you can have for those panels. I would definitely borrow some of the hallmarks of the smaller details, right? Like that there, and the grading there, right? I'm looking at that, I'm looking at that. I can definitely enhance possibly this part by just adding that inset there. All this micro detail on here is something that I definitely miss on this. So I want to see if I can bring back some of that. Who knows what this is, right? Maybe with your exploded view, if you choose this one, you can decipher what that is. Right, this handles complexity. I feel like I could also use it as a design opportunity to kind of beef up the mechanics of it. I'm not doing too much. I'm keeping your main form, but I'm just dividing it a little bit more into smaller pieces. Right? And this is sitting inside some kind of recessed opening. Alright, so this is great. I really enjoy what you did here with the paneling. Right, so I think that works out pretty well. Alright, I would say for the top of this, bring in some more transitional detail, right, before you get to the toast slot. Is there sub panels leading to it? Maybe. All right, I'll let you resolve that. Yeah. it feels a little bit too abrupt. It's just like surface, slot, right? Slot, right? So even for some of the bigger areas here, you can see some sort of panel work assembling it, and then they threw in a micro detail element. So definitely bring that back into your design as well. All right, cool. Yeah, really nice work, Rafa. And definitely everyone had, like, seems like they had a lot of fun with this first assignment, I hope. And I will save this and remember to bring it for Thursday. Okay, I think I'm running a little long on this review, so I'll probably get another 2 people before calling it a wrap, and I'll get to everyone for sure. It'll either be a live stream that's recorded, or I'll just record it. Sure, you're welcome, Rafa. I hope you're at a pretty good state with exploded view drawings, right? And I hope tonight's demo helped you in that regards as well. Okay, second person on here. Are you also in our class, or are you out there in YouTube land? All right. Okay, so I'm just gonna jump to ties then, unless someone chimes in and with a question. All right, so Wild Star. Let's see here. Let me try to find our source. I'll start. Oh, the Chua furniture stuff. Okay, so looking at these, Ty, I will probably choose maybe, let's see, let's do A. Right. There's some nice complexities going on here, like a lot of compound curves and things like that, where I think it starts to break a little bit from the Wildstar design collection. And I'm basing it on this one. If you're using another Wildstar concept sheet, let me know. But just based on this one, it's lacking the whimsy. All right, so just ever so slightly. There's curves to this. Right, a little character to some of the vertical lines that I feel is missing. And another aspect is also the offset of rounds with angular shapes, right? Like rectangle with a circle, and then you offset that within the rounded corners. So I'll see if I can bring that back in. Right? So I'll really play up the proportional ratio of some of your shapes here. And instead of it going just straight up and down, I want to see if I can tilt it just a bit. Right? And maybe instead of like a space corner for this one, how about a radius edge? So this little transitional element is a nice touch. I'll just keep it. Right, and it's ever so slight, but it's a round curve juxtaposed with a space corner, and hopefully that plays well. Here's a design opportunity that I might throw in. Okay, so I see your comment, Rafa. Could you upload it on the download section on LMS, perhaps? I'd like to look at the design before class. Sure, yeah, I'll definitely remember to throw it up there at the end of the stream tonight. It should be under 50 megs, so I hope it doesn't hit that 50 meg limit wall. All right, so Ty, design opportunity is I just basically made this a cowling, inset that a bit, and am throwing in your vent design. Right, and then this itself, can it also sit in some kind of recessed form? Right. And because these things are a little bit whimsical, I'm going to play around with offsetting this little panel you have here. Right? Just because this top area already feels pretty symmetrical, and I want to see if I can make it slightly different by offsetting this to the side and also bringing it in a bit so scale wise it doesn't compete too much with the ratio up top. And so maybe I'll also shrink it down a bit. Excuse the sniffling sound. Got a slight cold still. Okay. Definitely a cool element here to add in that bolt based on the Wildstar design. I might chunk it up a bit also. Right? You'll notice this in a lot of stylized design, but the chunk factor is definitely a design element that's often leaned on, right? When you're doing stylized design. And so what I'm saying is here, if I zoom in a bit, this silhouette is actually going down, coming out, going down, going back in. So that's the nature of that bolt there, right? Just to give that silhouette a little bit more of a oomph, right? Like do some lifting there instead of just making it everything flushed. Beef it up, beef that up, and inset possibly, maybe. And to sell this radius edge even more, do I place that panel up there and curve the top part of it a bit? And then that axis thing that you have right there. Alright, so that wraps it up for this first one. I'm not sure what the real world item is. I'm just thinking it's some sort of comm panel or, I don't know, space mailbox maybe. I don't know why you still use snail mail in space, but I thought that'd be a pretty good prop to have. Right, a little silly, but cool at the same time, I hope. Okay, so let's save this guy out. All right, Kung Fu Panda. All right. B and C feel okay. I think the one that I would push the most is probably A. Okay, and right off the bat, I would say take a look at what's happening with a lot of the silhouettes here, right? There's a lot of variety in what it's doing, right? There's like a stair step type of thing there, and for the most part, you do have it, but overall, right, that drop still feels again like this one has that to kind of offset it, but this one everything feels like I would push it just a tad more. Right, so let's jump in here and let's do this. Let's flare out that lid. Alright, I'm just going to use the same minor axis for all these ellipses. It's a pretty bad one. Getting late. Alright, so like this. And you can notice too in Mike Yamada's design that there's subtle width differences in the ratio of these band where the bands are kind of put in here, and here on your version, Ty, it feels very similar, right? This and this, right? So I'll definitely choose which one I want to emphasize more, whether it's the top or the bottom, and then I'll make the other elements a little bit subordinate to it. Right, so maybe for me, I would probably play up on the top. So maybe the top has more vertical height, but the bottom flares out a little bit more, but has less vertical height. Right, and for clarity, I might put the handle on the side instead of like a 3/4, like it's spinning back, just so it's a little bit more readable. All right, I know it might feel a little bit flat, but because there's a thickness to this, you can pull it back. Right, you can pull back the form, and it'll feel okay. Right, so here is another design opportunity as well. You see how through this there's kind of like a constant width right here, but then it kind of thins out a bit, right? So that's where I would totally borrow from as well, right? That part is a little thicker, but maybe as it gets towards the end, thins up a bit, right? And I'm not sure if this, if I'm looking at the lid side view. So this is a comment on the construction now. If this is actually dipping in, or it's meant to sit flushed on top, right? I'm gonna guess based on all of Mike's design that it's actually sitting on top. So construction wise, it's placed a little bit off, right? It should be a little bit higher. All right, so that pretty much wraps it up on this one. The design, because I flared it out a bit, gave it a pot belly. Any vertical element on it is gonna bow out in accordance, right? Maybe this as well. It's not a straight drop. I would probably mess around with some of the scaling of these rivets, and because you have, maybe if I put this scale rivets up here, down here the rivets are a little bit beefier, just so they don't seem too repetitive, because this in itself is already a repeating element, right? All right, cool. So that takes care of this one. All right, again, if you're joining us a little bit late, to kind of speed through everything, I'm just gonna pick what I think is probably the one that needs a little bit more push in the design side, and I'll work on those. Right, so doing all three or all four took a bit too long. Okay, so I think the toothbrush, we already had a bit of a chat in class. Some more comments to add. I would say B and C feel a little bit too close in terms of variation, right? It's just messing a little bit with the silhouette, but the design components feel a little bit similar. Where I would push for some variety, maybe, is, like really cool job on A. So when you start to have masses that are getting a little bit too nondescript, as like it's just a chunk of something, add in some more banding, or for lack of a better term, I guess, skeletal contours, right? This almost feels like it could be like a bone or something like that, right? So I'm just gonna throw in some repetitive, I don't know what the term is for it, I guess contours, or I'm thinking of kind of like the H.R. Giger aliens. You see that exoskeleton feel, and all the contouring around the aliens' skin design, or bone design, I guess, or exoskeleton design. right? So that's all I'm really doing here. And what I'm trying to do is basically sell the form, right? This is pretty much a cylinder, but because there's not enough surface design to it, it's a little bit vague. And the only thing that pulls it back is that. And oh, okay, you can kind of infer it's a toothbrush handle, right? So that saves it. But to strengthen the design a little bit more, I'm just going to add some transitional details and an extra layer of design components, right? Maybe there's a little bite or a crack taken out, right? This is the tooth, or maybe it's like the arm bone or leg bone of a monster that was used to craft this toothbrush, right? And where I would push again, right? Does this really have to be a rectangular silhouette, right? Can it be sharp diamond shaped, right? Almost like a teardrop, right? Following what I set up here. Right, and I have to be careful here because the proportion of the brush head is starting to compete a bit with the proportion of the handle. Right, so maybe scale it back a bit. All right, so something like that. And this is totally gonna tear your mouth up if you try to brush with it, but we're not worrying too much about functional design. Just as long as it feels like it's a toothbrush. Right, so all right. Oh hey, what's up, Jonathan? Just trying to wrap this up soon. I think I got another person, and yeah, the remaining 3 or 4, I'll try to wrap up the next day. All right, Ty. So this wraps it up for the toothbrush. Save this guy out, and yeah, for those of you tuning in, I will be saving this onto our LMS downloads section. So you can take a look at feedback for your own work and also your classmates. Okay, okay, I remember this from our first live stream. It was Blood Troll. So let me look up the reference again. I think I remember I got another one that had a bunch of cool skulls and skeletons added to the design. Oh, let's just go with that. Okay. All right. I think C is probably the strongest out of the 4. As far as A, B, and D goes, I'm not too sold on the elements on the front, Ty. They feel like, are they? I'm not sure if they're supposed to be horns or feet, right? And that's where it feels a little bit vague. Right? So. Or they might be tusk, right? So that's one thing I didn't think of, right? If they are tusk, I'm gonna pull it back and give it some context, right? And maybe attach it. I do remember the skulls from the first live stream. They had this whimsical eyeball feel to them. They didn't really look mean. They kind of looked surprised. So this flare is interesting. I would probably bring it to the front. And I forgot if they had sharp teeth or just like regular teeth. All right. And Jonathan, definitely chime in if you have any suggestions. Just for reference class, Jonathan is also a teacher at Academy, works in the game industry as well as a concept artist, right? So he definitely already has mileage in that category. All right, so now that I brought the tusk out, what I need to do to counteract kind of like the top heaviness aspect of this chest is I gotta make the bottom a little beefier, I feel. I'm a little bit lost in terms of where I can pull some visual design language from, so I'm gonna check this out. Okay. All right. So there is some chunky bracelet, and I don't know what these are, like ancient leg warmers maybe, but I can possibly pull that back in. Right, so I'm thinking this is what I'm trying to draw right here, that diamond silhouette thing. Right, so I'm trying to bring that all the way around. Right, and still try to sell box. Okay, so Jonathan's recommendation: when we at Vainglory design chess, we always try to keep these elements fairly simple with big reads of shape and value. Ah, good point. Right, so before I jump too far into detail land, I'm gonna heed that suggestion. right? So that's going to be my big read. Is this, right? And then mainly, like what you have here, Ty. I'm trying to keep the silhouette of what is a basic treasure chest, right? So hopefully I don't lose that. And this is something that I would definitely do a few views of to really figure out what's going on. Having the hierarchy. Okay, so this is Jonathan with a second comment here. Having the hierarchy of shapes with the big bold one being the skull is good. It's the anchor that you should build around. Making stuff too complex tends to not read in game, specifically mobile or Switch. Right? So all definitely good points there. And I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Jonathan, but Vainglory is kind of like a top-down 3D view, MOBA, right? Kind of like isometric almost, right? Yeah. So yeah, the read of big forms is definitely useful when you emphasize top-down. So good call on those right there. So yeah, so this is as far as I would go on this one. I think let me put it off to the side. Yeah, the main thing I did is just try to pull back on some of the shapes and really, yeah. Now looking at it, I don't know if I want to keep the bat ears, right? Just really trying to not lose that chest shape, like per Jonathan's suggestion, right? So yeah, I'll probably have to play with the bat ears a little bit more, but yeah, lose these boot like sock like looking elements, right? That's what they almost read like, and really integrate it into design, and so that it looks a little bit more cohesive, right? And depending on how visible this chest is in game, do I want to start detailing that? Who knows, right? So yeah, definitely a good reminder of how we design also is the angle of your gameplay, right? So kudos to Jonathan for reminding me of that. All right, cool. So let's move on to the next one, Ty. All right. Okay, so let's move on to Taylor's. Okay. So I'm gonna pick one from each, and then I think after this one I'm gonna call it a night. It's getting late, sleepy. Yeah. Taylor, this one's my favorite. I think that reads really well as like evil shears, right? I guess they have to guard in Darksiders or do landscaping. Um, one thing that I might refine a little bit or resolve is that hinge area. Right, so all right, cool. Thanks for the insight, Jonathan. Definitely helps out a lot and reminds me again of all the principles that we should strive for when approaching design. Thanks, dude. And definitely, yeah, keep me posted on where you're at these days too. Right, and yeah, have a good one. Take care. All right, so maybe some kind of hinge coming out of there. right? The bone with the wraps is a nice touch. Right. This one, this is the one that I'll probably say doesn't doesn't spell fear to me the most, and the only reason is that these look like regular teeth, I guess. Right? They're not scary teeth, and bottom half scary, top half kind of lost me a little bit. Right? And it gave me a chuckle actually because it adds a sense of whimsy to what is otherwise supposed to be dark and grim. Right? So I would probably just do this, something like this. And I'm being careful not to compete with your, I guess these are claws maybe, or bigger teeth shards at the bottom. Right, so maybe these are grandpa shark teeth and these are baby shark. Right. So I don't know why I thought of that. And my son's been listening to a lot of YouTube baby shark, uh, daddy shark, mommy shark, grandma shark, and grandpa shark nursery rhymes. All right, yeah, so that's the only aspect I would probably mess with. Another thing I might do, everything is starting to line up pretty vertically, like so, Taylor. So I want to see if it makes sense to just bust that out a bit, right? Flare out that radius and ulna bone, right? All right, so that's all I would probably do to this one. I mean, if I was to start coloring this to start, or if I were to start to color this, this would be a really cool challenge, right? Because what is this like gum, right? So you know, is it that? Yeah, is it gonna be super disgusting, or is this like just bone, right? All right, Kung Fu Panda. This one's cool. I like that one. That one works pretty well. Same comment on the shears, right? Just some kind of hinge or joint mechanism. These three work pretty well. One of the things that I might do here, right, and this is just presentation wise, is I might either show this from the top or bottom, depending on where your camera is, right? So I'm just gonna say you're looking up at the bottom side of this. So you see that plug in at the base of the handle, right? So that just adds a little bit more 3D-ness to it, right? Because right here you establish that you are looking at the bottom of it. So I want to continue that cell of the drawing, right? So that's the only part I would tweak a bit. And be careful of this. I'm not sure if this, I'm gonna say based on your line work that this is a square spout. So if that's the case, really sell that. Okay. This one here, proportion wise, I might beef this up a little bit more to offset the skinny one at the bottom and add some thickness to that. right? So that there's a side and a top surface. But otherwise, you know, here's another design opportunity as well. Like, do I flare this up top and taper at the joint or at the hinge, or vice versa? Do you taper up top and flare out at the bottom? Right? And then again, don't forget that thickness, the indication of material thickness, which you have here as well. Uh, Boost up some of the silhouette chunkiness, right? The banding. Quake 4, same comment, hinge. I think this one works okay. The other two are starting to lose its reference, its visual reference, right? The look that you're going for from Paul Richards, right? So bring back some of the construction, like the adding multiple space corners are cool, but I would definitely beef up this panel maybe. Right, so I basically just say that this is an extruded surface. This is too nondescript of a transition, Taylor. Right, this is where I would add another level of design. Right, so maybe it's inset into that, and before it goes to handle, maybe there's a sleeve to it, right, before it transitions up to this. And this, we only get like the outline of it. I'm guessing it's a flat handle, but because I don't have any indication of thickness or a side plane, it's a little bit for me, or a little bit hard for me to get a cell of that form. Right? So something like that, maybe. Um, is this angled down, or did the lid get placed on, at a diagonal? So if that's the case, if it's kind of like a downhill shape, I would really sell that even more by showing the top, or sorry, in this case, the front plane and the side plane. Right, something like that. Don't forget construction maybe. Does it make sense to have a space bolt? Maybe, maybe not. Alright, so I'll let you decide. Same comment here, right? The transition is just a little bit too nondescript, a little bit too quick for that design language in Quake 4. Alright. Bastion. Oh yeah, yeah, love that game. Oh, and you have a hinge in here, Taylor. So cool. Uh, it feels pretty good. I mean, from what I remember of Bastion. Alright, so I think, yeah. Let me pull it up. Yeah, the concept art of Bastion is definitely really cool. Oh, interesting. Pulling up Bastion concept art has a lot of the character from Overwatch, that robot. Okay, let's see. Bastion prop concept art. Let's see if that pulls up. Um, yeah, it's very character centric. There's not too much prop stuff that at least I can find online for Bastion. But let's just pull in the character and see if I can go from there. It's very stylized, uh, but all the verticals are vertical, I guess is the best way to put it. There's really no flair or playing around with proportions of line and stuff like that in this Bastion look. So for the most part, yeah, I would say this feels pretty good, right? Um, I would suggest possibly possibly messing around with the grain, some of the stuff, right? I try not to repeat it too much, but for the most part, I feel, I mean, just based on that one picture, the look is pretty good, right? You captured the feel pretty well, so I wouldn't mess too much with it. Um, some of the things that I might stress are, again, you know, breaking some of the silhouette in terms of not making things too flushed to the surface, right? So maybe here you got a surface that's flat, it goes up and it goes over, right? So very minor changes to what you have. But yeah, that's pretty much it on this page. Yeah, some really fun stuff, Taylor. All right, so let me save this off, and I'll call it a night for these. All right, it looks like I'm still missing Heath, Sayaka, Josh, and Anna, and I'll get to those tomorrow for sure before class. I'll probably have a recording. It won't be live stream. It might be, but yeah. Okay, have a good night, and thanks for tuning in, everyone. Take care.